Has there ever been a franchise that you were sure would be destined to be massive, that as a kid, the promise was more exciting than the reality? That's G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra for me.
Anna?
Because growing up in the UK, the G.I. Joe brand was basically non-existent. You could give credit to the fact that British people just don't give a fuck about US patriotism. But it's also because the original 12-inch figure was licensed here as Action Man, which became its own massive franchise. However, I have a special relationship with good old Yo Joe. I encountered G.I. Joe the movie in Poundland, and what little I knew about the franchise was completely contradicted. Who the hell is this guy? Did Duke just die? Why is Cobra Commander a snake? I was intrigued by all the drama from an entire other franchise I didn't have access to, because my little kid self didn't know what eBay was. All I could do was get family members to get me G.I. Joe Value vs. Venom on a USB stick, and also watch people reviewing the toys on YouTube wishing I had the same joy.
And since I'm going to be your captain for the day. Ha ha ha!
But then Michael Bay's Transformers was a massive hit, and immediately Paramount thought, what else? G.I. Joe? Haha. Actually, technically they were going to make G.I. Joe first, but there was a case of the Iraq War. This is a real quote from the executives, so it really just showed their priorities. Unfortunately, our president, George W. Bush, has put us in a position internationally where it would be very difficult to release a movie called G.I. Joe. But my underage body was ready. This was my opportunity to finally become a G.I. Joe fan. Does anyone remember this video talking about the cast?
Rumor has it that a dark future's in store for Gordon Levitt's character, said to be a former Joe, but that's all we're gonna say.
You son of a bitch! And I buried you!
So the goal of this video isn't to punch down on G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra, but to examine it as a case study of a reboot from a different period of time. This film is 16 years old now, and how studios approach franchise building is totally different. So imagine me as an archaeologist, documenting my observation. This fucking font choice is so blatant. However, you can't talk about Rise of Cobra without the infamous original screenplay by the guy who wrote Swordfish. It was a script so heinous that fans actually successfully bullied Paramount into changing it. Cobra wasn't called Cobra, but instead we have a dude called Ryan, a crooked CIA agent who's selling weapons and string along the Joes. Alex Man from Action Man shows up, married to Scarlet, but she still loves Duke. Then Baroness kills her at the halfway point. Then apparently it becomes like a buddy movie between Alex Man and Duke, in which the main henchman is called Cool Dude. Hong Kong gets nuked, and Ryan becomes Cobra Commander after a long villain monologue at the end. A lot of this is documented in this hilariously angry article, but I guess read it with a grain of salt because it's a case of I read the script but you can't scenario. In the end, they rewrote the entire story when Stephen Sommers came along, and Larry Hama served as creative consultant, and this new screenplay would go on to win Best Adapted Screenplay, and Stephen Sommers would be hired as the new Defense Secretary for the US. The actual plot of the real movie can be summarized with one word: nanobots. Which basically means instead of being a war movie, it's now trying to be a spy movie. To escort nanite warheads that can potentially destroy entire cities, 29-year-old Channing Tatum and 37-year-old Marlon Wayans mount up. Ripcord has dreams of joining the Air Force, while Duke doesn't approve, because he's all about boots on the ground.
Yeah, I'll buy you a trampoline.
This disagreement doesn't come back, it just explains how Ripcord can fly a plane at the end. The entire convoy then gets wiped out by Baroness, but G.I. Joe saves them before Duke blackmails himself into a temporary position.
Well, whoever you are and whatever this unit is.
If you think this is here to set up some sort of ideological conflict where the honest soldier has to work with a shady high-tech secret organization, then you've forgotten how this was made back when every macho main character has to have an explicit case of the not gays, because Baroness is actually Anne Lewis, his ex-fiancée. They broke up because he let her brother Joseph Gordon-Levitt get blown up in a warehouse somewhere. Now this normal woman has dyed her hair and shoots people with sonic guns. She attacks the G.I. Joe base and steals the warheads back to blow up the Eiffel Tower, killing countless people. What Team America did as a joke, G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra does seriously. There's one moment I want to dissect in particular because it just feels like it's written by ChatGPT. During the chase, Heavy Duty tells Scarlet to get involved as if she can run on foot as fast as an accelerator suit, in which for some reason they gave this extremely dangerous piece of hardware with wrist rockets to the new recruits instead of the experienced Joe.
Told you to read that manual. It's a manual?
I guess it's because she's a girl. However, a convenient motorcyclist stops right next to the van, which just had a car accident a second ago, and then she uses that. Why couldn't she just already have a G.I. Joe supplied motorcycle? After everyone in Paris dies, the Joes assault an underwater base where all the bad guys are at. As a result, the Rise of Cobra happens, as the title declared. when the mad scientist behind everything is revealed to be Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and he becomes Cobra Commander, only to be arrested immediately and be put into these comically small prison cells where you can't even sit down. If you ever wondered what it's like to watch a 2-hour-long mobile game ad approximating a movie, well, here it is. G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra feels uniquely quaint. What I've given you are the broad strokes, but what populates the running time are these cliches that as a society we've just stopped doing because it feels like it's beneath us. There isn't a love story, instead we have a love square. Duke loves Baroness, Baroness loves Duke, but Destro loves Baroness, which is what usually happens, and as part of Baroness's mission, she's also the wife of a French scientist.
Besides, his work at the lab goes much better after we've touched.
Who they use to prime the nanite warheads for the Paris attack. This husband character completely fucking baffles me because why does he exist? He gets killed by Storm Shadow's Hidden Blade cosplay prop under the order of Destro, which leads us to believe his tragic demise is here to present how utterly irredeemable Baroness is.
I told you I'd kill him if he touched you again.
I heard you the first time.
Like she plays her men like violins and then can cut their strings with no regrets. Like that's just how much pain Duke has inflicted onto her. However, was this undercover mission actually necessary at all? She holds him at gunpoint anyways, and because of this marriage, the Joes track her down to France because she didn't set her fucking Facebook profile to private.
Yeah, that's her, alright.
Worse yet, it's revealed none of her actions are her own. Instead, she's actually possessed by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who's pimping her out to various dudes.
I thought we had complete control. You said this couldn't happen.
What? This entire subplot now feels like misused real estate because there's no earth-shattering payoff to her realizing her grief was being weaponized against her, or even any shock over her beloved brother exploiting her. She's so plainly good that she helps Duke chase Joseph Gordon-Levitt down afterwards, before custody on a battleship. There's no actual arc, it's literally a good and evil switch being used, which only works out for Duke, who gets the girl in the end, by suffering enough unnecessary guilt for so long that he doesn't shoot her in the face after all her crimes against humanity.
Anna?
The one thing people universally like is Snake Lips and Storm Shadow, two awesome ninjas played by two awesome actors. Ray Parks with no lines is considerably way more captivating to watch than Channing Tatum.
Look, that wasn't you.
And Mr. Sunshine here is making all of us Asians proud. However, upon revisiting this film, there isn't actually like any real story here. They sword fight each other every time they meet, and then we get a flashback when it's calm. But the act of them remembering their shared childhood doesn't change how they interact or anything. It's just insight that's beneficial to us. Snake Lips isn't Henry Golding, but was a street kid brought into the Arashikage, making Storm Shadow so jealous that he ran away, which makes him look guilty because it happens to be right after the assassination of their master. But the twist, where he reveals he didn't do it, was cut because it confused the audience. As a result, Snake Lips now drops to his knees for no reason after killing him, aside from the loss of this perfect Korean specimen. It's pretty clear why the sequel expanded their roles so considerably. They're easily the most engaging part of the drama. They have clear, satisfying motivations played expertly with almost no dialogue. You can see their respect, their similarities and differences across each encounter, all through non-verbal movements. Although rewatching this film, you know who actually stole the show? It's Marlon Wayans. I wouldn't say he's funny here, but he's really likable. Channing Tatum doesn't look like he wants to be there.
Well, whoever you are,
Dennis Quaid looks fucking scary all the time, but Marlon Wayans is both used correctly and gives life to this silly movie. Speaking of silly, there's this sound effect that's fucking haunted me for years because it's like royalty free. Also, one thing I just never could put my finger on when it comes to sensing something wrong in the final act, now I've figured it out. Can you see it? Can you see what's wrong? Let me show you another clip of this problem. Did you notice it this time? Like, underwater explosions normally look like this. So why is there flames? I don't have anything else to say, apart from it took me 15 years to figure this out. One thing about this film I just couldn't get out of my mind while rewatching it was how this was so clearly a pre-MCU franchise starter film. I don't mean that in terms of there aren't enough, well that just happened kind of jokes, but it's the way it very specifically treats having campy source material that's originally made for little kids.
Hey bro, you got some real life like hell, but Oh, and a kung fu grip.
Where instead of playing it with any level of cheekiness or charisma, it instead pretends the source material has always been cool. It's like seeing Jane wearing a silly fucking hat and thinking he's intimidating. Like when they introduce Zoltan, he ominously whistles as the camera pans out of Destro's sub, which has bright lime green windows, or the fact that all the sinister nanites glow lime green. Say what you will about Marvel humor, but there's an understanding that cheekiness is one way to get away with colourful and bizarreness to a broad audience, for the reason that there has to be an explicit sense of enthusiasm, even if it's in the form of sarcasm, like how a clown has to really work hard to make the little kids believe he's not just a man in makeup. As a result, G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra feels more like your friend's aging biker dad wearing clown makeup for a birthday, but it's just too masculine to act goofy. I have no idea where I was going with that. Cliches can be described as a saying, idea, or an element of an artistic work that has become overused to the point of losing its original novelty or artistic power, to the point that it's blamed for being uninteresting. As Robert McKee once said, cliche is at the root of audience dissatisfaction, and like a plague spread through ignorance, it now infects all story media. A good story should observe people in such a way that it gives us insight about ourselves, and from that, it can teach us to articulate something that's often unintelligible. Cliches are instead about using a library of behaviors, actions, and relationships that people don't actually do, but you've seen so much that it's passable for a fictional person to do it. It's a shortcut that views humans' behavior through the lens of other movies, as opposed to the real world. So let's compare G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra with Captain America the Winter Soldier. Is it fair? No, not really. But both are set in heightened spy movie realities with goofy sci-fi technology, but where one has flying helicarriers, the other has underwater bases. Both features a square-jaw American soldier fighting against a conspiracy to take over the world using weapons that can wipe out entire populations. The climax is also all about stopping the launch. Both features a dark-haired lover being mind-controlled, a best friend who likes to fly, and a red-haired lady wearing all black. But Winter Soldier doesn't have any love triangle. It's not bloated with drama that doesn't go anywhere and isn't trying to overcompensate the campy elements by pretending everything is too cool to be silly. Instead, it opens with two men doing a morning run, becoming friends. Steve Rogers doesn't blackmail into having an audience with Nick Fury, Black Widow doesn't spend ages on a treadmill, and is engaged in a love script with Sam, Steve, and Bucky. On a fundamental level, Winter Soldier doesn't treat its established characters as mostly obligatory titles for typical action movie archetypes and plotlines. It lets the story tell itself because the characters are all so well realized and it's unafraid to be sensitive, or even sentimental, or even have strong opinions about American surveillance.
Shield, Hydra. It all goes.
Duke instead never really changes. He's just a good soldier at the start who feels guilty over letting his ex-fiance's brother die in a warehouse, and by the end, he's the same. Discovering Joseph Gordon-Levitt is Cobra Commander doesn't change him. His enduring spirit doesn't inspire others. They could have done that route with Anna, but then she's possessed the whole time. Furthermore, that leadership skill the film thinks he has, because canonically he leads G.I. Joes on the fucking battlefield, doesn't go anywhere, because he's totally isolated at the end.
And I shoot those guys.
Love to.
His whole fucking storyline, it cobbles itself together from a collection of so many other things that it's just plain fucking weird. The advantage this comparison shows us is that there's a midpoint where citing cliche isn't used to compensate a lack of interest from the storytellers, because interest in really looking at a cartoon character and saying, what would they be like as a real person? Their hopes, their dreams, their struggles, their past. That ends up allowing you to let the story tell itself. And that is fundamentally different compared to how can we fit this cartoon character into a filmic cliche of someone the audience is familiar with, that the audience won't think that they're a cartoon character again.
With the entire balance of power in the world about to shift, two guys can still have a stare down over who gets the girl.
I've done a lot of rambling, so let's get into the actual essay part of this video essay, which is, what is this movie about? This has been bugging me since I was like 12 years old, because there are these patterns everywhere, but they don't coalesce explicitly into a clear message. Characters constantly talk about selling weapons to both sides.
His enemies know that it is the true McCullen destiny, not simply to supply arms, but to run the wars.
There are two sides to McCullen's operation. The sword and the shield. The sword creates and sells weaponry. The shield creates defensive technology, like high-tech bunkers, which are supposed to protect one from anything from a nuclear blast to a nanomite warhead.
But then in this scene, there's no philosophical rebuttal from Duke. He's all about that Baroness instead.
Who are you?
The movie is bookended by Destro and his ancestor getting their faces turned into metal after being caught selling weapons to the wrong side. But the circumstances is completely different. One is being punished by the crown, the other is saved by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. The greatest philosophical rebuttal I can find is perhaps we should just treat the culture of service G.I. Joe has as the opposing ideal.
Flag in her arm.
Why didn't you just come in?
Because I discovered something.
Instead of the private military-industrial complex that's not loyal to anything but money, G.I. Joe's eliteness is valued by the fact that everyone are the best of their country, and as a result, every member of the Joes, and I guess soldiers in general, are national representatives. They have a diplomatic and ethical responsibility to leave France and never come back, because they fucking fucked up and let the Eiffel Tower be destroyed.
What do you mean by never? Like never, never, ever?
And they have a responsibility to save Russia from nanites. My guess is that the film was far more patriotic, but they cut it down as much as possible to not alienate the British audience. It's very only the British audience, since they had every popular G.I. Joe catchphrase, but real American heroes. But there is this residual pattern where in a world where nations are becoming a thing of the past, since those in powers are the industrialists and the private companies, we can look at the Joes as a form of veneration towards the relevance of national armies, and as a rejection of the privatization of war. How plausible is my reading? Well, just look at Channing Tatum's expression during this evil monologue.